Hello. Hey, I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Grandma wants to tell you another story from the Book of Virtues. And this is a story about Susan B. Anthony. And this is another story of someone who demonstrated great courage. And because of their courage, they were able to help a lot of people. Okay, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which provides for full women's suffrage, was not ratified until 14 years after Susan B. Anthony's death in 1906. Nevertheless, her name, more than any other, is associated with American women's long struggle to vote. Her firm resolve made her one of our greatest examples of political courage. All right, Susan B. Anthony. "What the blazes are you doing here?" shouted the man at the big desk. "You women go home about your business. Go home and wash the dishes. And if you don't clear out of here fast, I'll get the cops to put you out." Everybody in the store stopped and listened. Some of the men just turned around and sneered. Others looked at the 15 women mockingly and guffawed, and they laughed. One man piped up, "Beat it, you dames, your kids are dirty." And at that, every man in the place bellowed with laughter. But this banter didn't faze the tall, dignified woman who stood with a piece of paper in her hand at the head of the 14 other ladies. She didn't budge an inch. "I've come here to vote for the President of the United States," she said. "He will be my president as well as yours. We are the women who bear the children who will defend this country. We are the women who make your homes, who bake your bread, who rear your sons and give you daughters. We women are citizens of this country just as much as you are, and we insist on voting for the man who is to be the leader of this government." Her words rang out with the clearness of a bell, and they struck to the heart. No man in the place dared move now. The big man at the desk who had threatened her was turned to stone. And then, in silence and dignity, Susan B. Anthony strode up to the ballot box and dropped into it a paper bearing her vote. Each of the other 14 women did the same, while every man in the room stood silent and watched. It was the year 1872. Too long now had women been denied the rights that should naturally be theirs. Too long now they had endured the injustice of an unfair law, a law that made them mere possessions of men. Women could earn money, but they might not own it. If a woman was married and went to work, every penny she earned became the property of her husband. In 1872, a man was considered complete master of the household. His wife was taken to be incapable of managing her own affairs. She was supposed to be a nitwit, unable to think clearly, and therefore the law mercifully protected her by appointing a guardian, a male guardian, of course, over any property that she was lucky enough to possess. Women like Susan B. Anthony writhed at this injustice. Susan saw no reason why her sex should be discriminated against. "Why should men make the laws?" she cried. "Why should men form the chains that bind us down? No," she exclaimed, "it is up to us women to fight for our rights." And then she vowed that she would carry on an everlasting battle as long as the Lord gave her strength to see that women were made equal in the sight of the law. And fight she did. Susan B. Anthony was America's greatest champion of women's rights. She traveled unceasingly from one end of the country to the other. She made thousands of speeches pleading with men and trying to arouse women to fight for their rights. She wrote hundreds of pamphlets and letters of protest. It was a bitter and difficult struggle that she entered upon, for the people who opposed her did not hesitate to say all kinds of ugly and untrue things about her and her followers. No decent woman would talk like that. No refined lady would force her way before judges and men's associations and insist on talking. She is vulgar, they said. Many women who knew Susan B. Anthony, that she was a refined, intelligent, and courageous woman, were afraid to say so. They were afraid that they would be looked down on. But in time, they grew to love her for trying to help them. After a while, many housewives gained courage from her example. And then in great meetings, they joined her by the thousands. Many a man began to change his notions when his wife, inspired by Susan B. Anthony, made him feel ashamed at the unfair treatment accorded to women. Slowly, the great Susan B. Anthony was undermining the fierce stubbornness of men. On that important day in 1872, she and her faithful followers cast their first ballots for president. But though the men in the polling place were momentarily moved, their minds were not yet opened. In a few days, Susan was arrested and brought before a judge, accused of having illegally entered a voting booth. "How do you plead?" asked the judge. "Guilty," cried Susan, "guilty of trying to uproot the slavery in which you men have placed us women. Guilty of trying to make you see that we mothers are as important to this country as are the men. Guilty of trying to lift the standard of womanhood so that men may look with pride upon their wives' awareness of public affairs." And then, before the judge could recover from this onslaught, she added, "But, Your Honor, not guilty of acting against the Constitution of the United States, which says that no person is to be deprived of equal rights under the law." "Equal rights," she thundered. "How can it be said that we women have equal rights when it is you and you alone who take upon yourselves the right to make the laws, the right to choose your representatives, the right to only send sons to higher education? You blind men, have become slaveholders of your own mothers and wives." The judge was taken aback. Never before had he heard these ideas expressed to him in such a forceful manner. However, the law was the law. The judge spoke quietly and without much conviction. "I am forced to fine you $100, he said. "I will not pay it," said Susan B. Anthony. "Mark my words, the law will be changed." And with that, she strode from the court. "Shall I follow her and bring her back?" said the court clerk to the judge. "No, let her go," answered the elderly judge. "I fear that she is right and that the law will soon be changed." And Susan did go on to further crusades across the vast stretches of the United States, proclaiming in every hamlet where her feet trod her plea for womanhood. Today, voting by women is an established fact. Women may keep what they earn, and whether married or single, they own their own property. It is taken for granted that a woman may go to college and work in any business or profession she may choose. But these rights enjoyed by women of today were secured through the valiant effort of many fighters for women's freedom, such as Susan B. Anthony. And so many things that we take for granted that women can do today did not come about without great courage on the part of women, such as Susan B. Anthony. Now, the 19th Amendment was passed in 1920 after Susan B. Anthony already died, and that guaranteed women the right to vote. And prior to that, some states had already passed laws allowing women to vote. For example, Utah was one of the first states back in the late 1800s that allowed women to vote. But it was not something that could be taken for granted because very few people were allowed to vote back then. And now we have so many freedoms that we can do things as we choose. We have our freedom to choose. And it is because of the courage of women like Susan B. Anthony. We might not change laws to allow women to vote, but there are other things that we can stand up for and stand up for what's right. And when we have the courage, we can influence the way other people act and think and what people do. So I hope you will practice being courageous. Remember, Grandma loves you, and I will tell you another story later. Bye.